Yeah, sometimes we're a little early and sometimes we're a little late.
Yeah,
You just never
my
know.
clock says 3 minutes early.
Yeah, we are. Mine does too. But with technology, I mean,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable what can happen
Oh, don't. Yeah.
when you,
Been there,
I
done
mean,
that.
my
Mhm.
gosh. Yeah. Okay, fantastic. All right. So we're here. I can see us on our lovely, let me go to live and I'll edit all of this out. So we are live. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and let me see here, Lydia. How do we look, my dear? Oh, good. Looks like we've got a couple of people already. Hi, Ruby. Fantastic. And I'm going to go. Here we go. Welcome back, everybody, to Everything Horses and More. You know who I am, Caroline Best, the founder of Doubt Horsemanship and your host for today's podcast. You know who my lovely co-host is, Lydia Primavera. And today, hi, Lydia. Today's guest speaker is Dr. Rob Silver, DVM MS. Hi,
Hello.
Dr. Silver. Welcome. And
Thank you.
today's topic is, yeah, thank you so much. Today's topic is healing your pets with integrative medicine. And this is right up our alley. This is so
Mhm.
fascinating and so important. And for all of my followers, you know that I'm always trying to stay on top of things and share the latest in everything, from what I learned, what I experienced, working with my horses, and in every type of facet, the whole holistic approach. So today, I'm going to give you guys a little background on Dr. Silver. He graduated in 1982 from Colorado State's College of Veterinary Medicine. He established one of the first integrative vet clinics in the USA in Boulder, Colorado, where you reside today. He established this integrative clinic all the way back in 1993. Wow, you were a pioneer.
I'm an
Since
old
then,
timer.
Dr. Silver, so am I, so are we.
Mhm.
Since then, Dr. Silver has become a nationally recognized expert in veterinary herbal and nutraceutical medicines, medicinal mushrooms, which we're going to talk about mushrooms, CBD, and
Mhm.
herbs today,
Yes.
and veterinary, CBD. I'm very interested in that, in cannabis therapeutics. He has adjunct faculty positions at Lincoln Memorial University, College of Veterinary Medicine, and Chi University, a college of traditional Chinese veterinary medicine, which is really important to us. We're definitely into that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is, well, welcome.
Thank you.
Anything
Thanks for having me
before?
today. This
Yeah.
is special for me. I don't usually get to talk to audiences of horse lovers. Mostly it's the dogs that
Okay.
that I speak with. So it's nice. Horses are very special to me,
Yeah.
and I'm glad to be
Oh,
able to
good.
offer
Yes, they are special.
some
Well, this is
information.
really important. I'm
Hmm.
really excited that your publicist came to us, because this, what we're going to talk about, is so important. As a
Thank you.
pioneer,
Mhm.
you've been doing this for a long time, but getting it out there and into the public awareness is what we're talking, what is still new. Um,
Thank
Especially mushrooms. That
you.
that piqued my interest. I'm like, what are you talking about? Mushrooms, CBD oil. I think that's pretty popular here in Ocala because we're a mecca for different equine sports and disciplines.
Absolutely.
People travel from all over the world. My
Mhm.
farm is 20 minutes, if that, to the World Equestrian Center. So
Mhm.
that is huge, and
Yes.
they bring in people, from all over the world that fly their horses
Mhm.
in to compete and show. And while I'm not interested in that, nor am I focused on that, the horses, I know for a fact, could, especially sport horses, could benefit from what you're going to be talking about today.
Absolutely. Hmm. Yeah.
This is really important.
Hmm.
Okay.
So yeah, you did you have some questions you wanted to get
Yes,
started with?
I
Yeah.
do.
Let's
Yeah, I sure
get
do.
rolling. Yeah.
So let's before we dive into the mushrooms, the CBD oil, and the herbs, how did you get interested in integrative veterinary medicine? How did that start?
Well, I'm very success oriented. And after I graduated from vet school in 1982, quite a while ago, I was certain that I had learned every skill I needed to do battle with every disease that I would encounter out there in the real world. But after a few years out there, I found there's some problems that pets get that we just don't have good answers for. And primarily the chronic diseases, chronic pain, diabetes, Cushing's, epilepsy, cancer, you name it, we know those problems, the skin problems, you know, and so I started looking for other answers. And I've always had an interest in plants and herbs. And I had an interest early on in learning about edible plants and doing, backpacking and a survival thing. So I started with herbs. I started to learn about herbs and learned how to identify them and make medicines. And I also started learning about diets. And so I started with those two simple things that I could learn from books, because at the time there really weren't training programs for veterinarians. That was a while ago. And and I started to apply those little by little in my practice, and I started seeing success. And it was encouraging, and I was starting to see some problems that I couldn't treat adequately with drugs or other conventional therapies when I switched them to a healthy diet, a non-processed, diet. I started to see improvements. So that really encouraged me. And so everything else that has transpired in my career since then was a result of that early inspiration. And I've continued my studies in herbal medicine. I'm currently president of the American College of Veterinary Botanical Medicine, which is a group of very dedicated veterinary herbalists who are trying to establish a specialty college and an advanced training program for herbalists in veterinary medicine. So we're working on that. That's a long process, So I've been very actively involved in trying to promote the use of herbal medicine and other non-conventional therapies with my conventional peers. So I spend a lot of time traveling and speaking at conferences to veterinarians, teaching them why these are legitimate, scientifically based therapeutics they should consider adding on to their conventional therapies. It's not an either or, it's like one of my old, when I was in vet school, we used to, in January, when it was so cold, we'd go riding out the feedlots with our sheep clinician. And he was full of wisdom, and he used to say, one of his favorite phrases was, "Silver, you don't throw the baby out with the bath water." In other words, to me, what that means is it's not one or the other. It's not conventional or alternative. It's integrating both into using the best from each for each individual patient's needs. So it might be different. You might treat one patient with the same disease as another patient differently because there's a difference in those patients. There's some individuality that needs to be addressed, which will make the treatment more successful. Long-winded answer.
Yes.
That's kind of why
Beautifully
I'm what I'm
doing.
doing.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, we are so excited. Thank you, especially when you're talking about, Cushing's and skin issues. I've got a young horse with skin issues, and I had to take him to University of Florida, for dermatology, and he's allergic to air. I mean, that's what I said. I said, "Oh, he checks 100% and everything. He's allergic to freaking air."
Well, what he's inhaling, all the little particulate pollen, things like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they didn't even talk about that. No, they didn't talk about that. I meant that. But they just said, "Oh, that's a good, funny way of putting it, Caroline." And I'm like, well, he can't eat anything. And what do you mean he can't eat anything? And how do we know it's either? They said, "Oh, it could be the flies, and it's the hay, and it's the grass." And I'm like, this is really weird. He was born here on my farm, actually, before I bought it. And I'm like, what about pollen? But they didn't even get into that, Dr. Silver.
They didn't do any kind of testing, any allergy testing to find out what he might be sensitive to.
They did. Oh yeah, I spent a lot of money. They like I said, he tested 100% on everything. And they said, well, put him on, we're going to give him a shot. He was supposed to come back in a year. It's been 2 years because He's doing so much better. Trust me. I wanted to see if he would outgrow it, along with
Mhm.
the work that I do holistically would
Sure.
help his immune system on an
Yeah.
emotional level, help his immune system. And so the biggest thing they said was put him on what we take, an antihistamine. So he started out with 15 antihistamines a day. I ended up bumping him up to 30 the following year instead of taking him back. His skin disorder was about 20% out of 100, raging. It was down to 20. Now I've weaned him down to 15 again. Just frustrating. And they,
There's-
I'm supposed to take him back every year for these shots, this accumulation, they test him and then they concoct this shot for him that he only needs once a year. And I'm like, but wait a minute.
That's
It's
weird.
like you just
Yeah.
said, it's where's the integration here of all of these
Mhm.
things working? And I haven't had the time to look into someone more holistic like you. I'm calling you more holistic.
Sure. Well, and as you know, disclaimer, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not as knowledgeable as many of the equine internal medicine problems. I'm just not that knowledgeable as far as what the testing procedures are and what we see commonly in the horse as far as allergies, both to food or inhalants. But looking at it with a broad brush and a bigger picture, I'd say there's a mushroom for that. And maybe there's some CBD for that, because as natural therapies, they can naturally help to lower the level of inflammation in the body as a whole, which oftentimes with allergies, we gradually increase that level of inflammation as we're continued to be exposed to these same allergens. So it can naturally sort of lower the level. And there's mushrooms. There's two mushrooms in particular, which have antihistaminic effects that, in addition to that, they have immune modulating effects, all in the same mushroom. So that's not wanting to jump into things, but let's jump into things. That's what I find so fascinating about both mushrooms and cannabis. And Lydia asked me, well, you'll talk about other herbs, won't you? And I can certainly, but I'm so totally fascinated with these two plants and fungi, because each one in and of themselves has so many active molecules. They do so many different things. I'm fond of calling mushrooms and actually cannabis kind of the Swiss Army knife, because it has so many tools in it that can be used for so many different things. Sometimes it seems too good to be true. I knew what they say about things that are too good to be true. They probably are not true, but it sometimes seems unusual that a mushroom or a plant like cannabis could treat so many different things, from epilepsy to behavior to pain to itching with the skin to GI problems to all of those things. And yet it does, because it has such a wide range of activity within the body. Same with mushrooms. We see mushrooms improve immune system function. They can have antihistaminic properties. They can be calming. They can promote performance. These are all things we'd like to see in our horses, wouldn't we? A little bit of calming and improved performance, not a bad deal, And so the problem is that we don't have the studies yet. This is such a new thing, and studies take time and they cost money, and usually the only funding organizations for these studies are usually the companies that are selling stuff. And of course, that raises the specter of bias. Is there some bias in the study? And so we're kind of working anecdotally to begin with. And I'm working with some equine practitioners who I'm sending samples to and suggesting they try it at a certain dosage in certain horses with certain conditions to try to figure
I'll
things
take
out.
some samples. Yes.
We can
I'll
talk
be one
about
of
that.
those.
We can talk about that later, Caroline, after
I'll promote you.
talk.
Oh yeah, I'll promote the
There are
heck out of you. I'm all
specific
about
areas
that.
I'm very interested in. One, and your horses aren't on the racetrack, but one of the things that's of interest to me is looking at using mushrooms to help with performance, but also to help with the equine bleeders that we see. And so I'm curious about that. We know there's one herb we're already using in horses for bleeders it's a Chinese herb called Yunnan Payao that helps with bleeding. But I need to find out more. I need to use it. So anyway, so that's kind of what where I'm at with these different
That
approaches.
is powerful. That
You
is
know,
so powerful. Yeah. And I mean, like I told you, Ocala is like one of the world's
oh,
mecca
I know Ocala.
headquarters
I've been there. I've been there.
yeah.
I've worked
So this would
with vets there. Yeah.
this would be a great
Hmm.
great to get you out with everyone here and recognized. So, I don't want to hog up this podcast, but
No, no.
just putting it out there because I know skin may not be a huge issue for a lot of people with their equines. It is here in Florida just because of
Hmm.
the wet conditions and the
Sure.
mold
Yeah.
and the
Insects.
dampness.
Hmm.
But yeah, Cushing's is huge for me. Equine metabolic syndrome with my audience. I mean, that's the whole
Hmm.
diabetes thing is just insane with
Hmm.
horses.
Well, and when we look at the effect of mushrooms, or when we look at the effect
Wow.
of CBD or cannabinoids,
Mhm.
because it's not just CBD, there's CBG, and the only cannabinoid in the cannabis plant that I don't recommend for horses is THC. THC kind of scares me in a horse. You get a 1,200-pound horse on, it's a bit stoned. I don't want to be around
Oh,
that horse.
yeah, I
Although
gotcha.
it may, some horses it may sedate, other horses it might have an idiosyncratic reaction like loco weed that you're not really looking for. But
Good point.
what we know from studies, from basic studies in a number of different species, we haven't gotten them in the horse yet, we haven't gotten them in the dog yet, but we know that both mushrooms and CBD help to better regulate insulin in the body. And so we find that it can
Wow.
help a lot with type 2 diabetics, the whole metabolic syndrome. It's both genetic and acquired and dietary, and it's a number of different conditions that all come together. So something like a mushroom, which really is a superfood, they're very safe. They're not drugs, they're foods. And most of the really potent medicinal mushrooms also are very lovely edible mushrooms as well. I don't know if you enjoy eating mushrooms yourself, but these days we're seeing a lot more, even in the supermarket, of the shiitake mushroom, which is originally
Yes.
sourced from Japan, but now there's a whole cottage industry here in the US of people are growing mushrooms and then selling them at the local farmers market or at the grocery store. And the shiitake mushroom has some of the most potent immune
Mm.
modulating, anti-cancer, metabolic function of any of the mushrooms out there. So
Wow.
so we don't really worry about them. Yeah, I get questions all the time. Am I giving too much? Do I have, can I give it all the time? People and people understandably, we're bombarded by so much information. We're bombarded by so many warnings. The pet food recall of 2007 got pet parents super, super paranoid about anything different in the
Mhm.
food or in supplements. They're very, very aware of every single ingredient. So something like mushrooms are very safe. They can be used with other drugs with impunity. The only problem we might see is if they're on anticoagulant therapy, then we worry about the mushrooms then. But we worry about anticoagulant therapy with almost any herb or drug as well. So mushrooms can be used very safely in horses, and I think that they would have a good benefit, although I don't have the scientific evidence. Certainly, there's some mushrooms like the cordyceps mushroom, which has gotten so much interest with that Netflix horror movie, which is not cordyceps at all, but it certainly is a cool concept. Cordyceps is a fungus that infects insects, and it kind of takes over the insect nervous system and gets the insect to like an ant to walk to the top of a plant and then chomp onto the top leaf, and then it dies and it releases all those spores. Mushrooms have this innate intelligence. It's amazing that the Netflix horror movie, if you're not aware of it, says
Mm.
that this cordyceps fungus takes over the mind of humans and creates zombies. And so it's another zombie apocalypse
Yes.
type of movie, which I
Yes.
absolutely hate, and I haven't even seen
Ah,
it, but it's gotten a lot of people's interest. Anyway, the cordyceps mushroom, which does not grow, the more Real Mushrooms, which is the company that I'm chief veterinary officer for, that both cultivates these mushrooms and processes them into standardized products that have standardized potency to them.
Okay.
They don't grow their cordyceps on insects, they grow it on rice. But the cordyceps mushroom is known to have a benefit for endocrine problems such as Cushing's. The cordyceps mushroom also helps to provide support for the adrenal glands because it's an adaptogen, and adaptogens are compounds that help to support the body through stress, primarily through the stress organ, which is the adrenal glands. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of places that we can go with mushrooms, with horses. We're just waiting, to get a little more evidence. And, before we go to doing studies, that's where I'm working with equine practitioners to get some more evidence as far as the use of these mushrooms for performance in horses.
So if I understand correctly, you're not going to be able to we can't buy anything from you right now. Like, you're not our source.
Well, no. So let me explain some things. I wear many hats. Okay. I'm chief veterinary officer for Real Mushrooms, and I believe that's probably how you reached out to me, through our publicist or whoever is trying to get me lined up for podcast. I'm supposed to be doing at least 3 podcasts a month for them as a way of helping to promote their products. They've got a very robust online sales. Anyone can go to Real Mushrooms, and they give very good discounting, and it's realmushrooms.com. And Real Mushrooms sells their mushrooms not just in capsules, but in pouches that have maybe 45 to 60 grams of just pure mushroom powder in it. These would be ideally suited for use in the horse. I'm looking to make some special equine large dog types of formulas that would not just have a single mushroom in it, that will label for equine and then label how to dose it for equine. I've developed a dosing model to use for all animals, regardless of their weight, that takes into account their the severity of their condition. And with horses, we know that with herbs, they're very, very sensitive. Horses are, because they're grazers and they're foragers, they've developed a system that can really extract very well whatever it is they're munching on. Very little oils out there in the forage that they have in pasture, but nonetheless horses are able to extract those oils, the fatty acids that they need for their skin and for other problems, quite well. I know an equine nutritionist who did a study in horses where he measured blood levels after giving them human doses of human fish oil. And he found that you could give human doses of fish oil to a horse and you could get therapeutic blood levels, the same as you would with a human. So from that, I realized that horses are so sensitive. I did a dosing study in horses with CBD. I worked with 30 horses, 10 horses in 3 different stables, 3 different kinds of stables as well. One was a dressage stable up in Virginia, very high-end horses. One was a backyard horse stable here in Colorado. And then the other was a bunch of, old broken down farm animals, from one of my holistic vet friends in Indiana. And we found that depending on the health of the animal, they need different dosages. The old broken down horses that had terrible laminitis, that they were on bute, and that didn't seem to be helping much. They saw benefit at higher dosage levels, for the CBD. The dressage horses, they didn't take much at all because they were in such good shape. In fact, some of them, started to get, they started to get to this point where they were like questioning the commands they were being given, because they were just kind of going, oh, this feels pretty good. The CBD and these things that don't have THC in them, they don't get you stoned, but they do have an effect on the mind. And it's a good effect. It makes the mind more alert. It makes it more settled. It makes it more accepting of incoming information. So that's one reason why people take CBD at night before bed, not because it makes you sleepy, but because it settles the mind. That's the part that keeps us from sleeping, is our mind is so busy. So I found that, that the dosage for horses could range all the way from like 25 milligrams, which is a human dosage and quite would be quite low for a 1,200-pound horse. That was satisfactory. You know, some they had go 50 milligrams. That seemed to work better. Many of them weren't able to go twice daily to the stable to medicate them. They just did once a day medication, and we found that still to be working. And just recently, last year, we have two studies that were published, one from Davis and one from CSU, both of which did what are called pharmacokinetic studies for CBD in the horse. What they did was they gave the CBD to the horse, and then they measured its levels in the blood every 15 minutes to 30 minutes to an hour over a period of like 12 to 24 hours. They developed a curve so they could find out how long did it take for the CBD to reach a peak level in the blood, how long did it take for that CBD to die off. And that also gives us a clue, because CBD is being tested for with performance, as a performance enhancing drug, and it can disqualify a horse that's in competition. The penalties aren't as great as for THC, but nonetheless, it's still a disqualification. So we worry about that. The fact we found that horses that get hemp levels of CBD that has THC in it, we call that a full spectrum hemp product, they actually will test positive for the THC as well. So we recommend for horses that they be given either a broad spectrum CBD, which has the THC removed, but has the CBD and the terpenes and the other minor cannabinoids, or that they get something we call an isolate. And the isolate is like 99.7% pure CBD. And for some horses that have more painful conditions, the isolate's a lot less expensive than the broad spectrum. So the one study that we have published about treating pain in a horse that comes out of CSU, they wound up using isolate, and they used dosages. I'm talking about dosages of 25 to 50 milligrams. They were using dosages of 150 to 250 milligrams, but they worked in this horse that was painful. And they were able to eventually titrate the dosage down from 250 mgs to like 100 mgs a day, to keep it, to manage it. So what we've learned from dosing CBD in dogs and humans and horses is that each individual is an individual, and they may have different needs horse to horse for what they need as a dosage. And although, especially with a painful horse, you want to get something on board as soon as possible, I wouldn't consider CBD to be a standalone therapy for pain. We need to use as many tools as we can together at the same time to treat pain. We don't want our horses to be painful. We don't want to be painful. We don't want our dogs or children to be painful. Pain is the first thing we want to take care of. So CBD alone is good for pain, but not as standalone therapies. And CBD has been shown to be good for pain. A lot of the pain is associated with inflammation. So we need to use what we call a multimodal therapy. And I recommend with horses and any animal, dogs as well, and people, that you start with a lower dosage and you give it a week or two to build up on the system. We know it takes about 7 to 10 days for the blood to develop a steady state of blood levels of CBD. So I suggest that you start with a dosage that's low, because some horses respond at a low dosage, and it can be expensive dosing. CBD is still relatively costly, even though the cost is coming down, with time and with increased supply. So I recommend starting at a low dosage, giving it about a week or so, and then double the dosage, start to bring the dosage up, and then try that for another week to see if that helps. Because you might have a horse that responds well to a low dose. Why give it more? As they jokingly call that expensive urine. I mean, there's no need for it. They just pee it out. So that's what I think. I'm sorry.
Who do we consult with? How do we know what to choose? And definitely how much to give our horse?
Selecting a product can be a challenge. And there are a few companies out there that are specifically providing products for the equine. I have my own website, speaking of where you get things. I want my information to be pure information. I don't want to be connected with some sales pitch, but I know that's kind of what the standard is these days in our culture. So I have my own website. I call it wellpetdispensary.com. And on this
Okay.
website, it's primarily a dog and cat focused website. Um, but on this website, I do sell a I do sell my own brand of CBD products, which I call Doc Silver Naturals, and they're CBD blended with something called CBG. And CBG has been found in studies to be about 10 times stronger than CBD as an anti-inflammatory agent and for many other things, as well as for calming. So these are THC free. It comes as a very concentrated tincture that has 2,700 milligrams in it of cannabinoids, and that can be used as a tincture just put in the mouth. There are some companies that are making pellets for horses, and pellets can be a very good vehicle of administration to the horse, because we also know that CBD is better absorbed when it's given with food. So in a pellet, it is food, so we've seen, there's one study they did where they combined they compared the blood levels from tincture versus the blood levels from pellets, and they found the pellets gave better absorption of them. There's another type of CBD out there, raw CBD, which is called CBDA. And CBDA is even more potent than CBD. It's about as potent as CBG. That's why I'm using the CBG, because CBDA is not very good tasting. But there's some companies that are taking the raw hemp and pelleting it without heating it first. When they heat the hemp, it becomes processed, and no longer do you have these acidic cannabinoids in it. And the plant, when it grows naturally, it grows these cannabinoids in an acidic form. So you don't get CBD in the plant, you get CBDA. You don't get THC, you get THCA. And the THCA, because it's acidic and has a different shape to the molecule, doesn't get you high when it's raw. So it has to be heated in order to do that. So but nonetheless, we don't want to take the chance that the CBDA could convert in the product under heat and light and oxygen or the THCA rather could convert to THC. That could be risky. So I still recommend looking at, zero THC or very low levels of THC in it. So yeah, my website would have that. We also sell the Real Mushrooms products there.
So do we consult with you?
Yes.
I guess the question,
I'm sorry?
excuse me, the question would be, yeah, this is great. And we all want to know, we go to your website, but we'll have to consult with you. Am I correct?
Well, I
what's
have
the
a
process?
contact form, so you can certainly use the contact form to reach out to me.
Okay.
I know most websites, they're really big and automated, but we're kind of just a little family thing. And we used to run it out of the house. We've gotten bigger now, and my wife works too much, and she's too conscientious, and so we got the shipping out of the house. But yeah, no, it's you can use the contact form. Also, Caroline, I'd like to after this give you a discount coupon that your viewers could use for their first purchase there, to kind of give them an opportunity to try it. I'm sure a lot of your equine attendees also have dogs that might be interested in some of the stuff that I have as well. But yeah, no, I'm happy to give advice as best I can. Obviously, I can't give medical advice. That's really not considered to be ethical without a doctor-patient relationship. But I do my best to give advice that works and is safe. And usually I also advise certain tests, or that they go find a holistic veterinarian in their neighborhood that they could work with directly, because it's it's still just it's not a medical appointment when I'm giving advice like that.
Oh, wow. Well, I just want to ask all the right questions, because I know I'm going to get asked them, or they're going to want to contact you and be like, oh my gosh, how do I know, what's the right step or which one to take? And so just knowing to go to your website, and I'll put all this information when we're done with this podcast and I promote the link to my Facebook page, I'm going to leave your website on there and how to contact you. And I just want to make sure that's okay. That they contact you directly. Yes.
That's fine. Yeah. And so, we talked about some very serious conditions on the horse that aren't super common, although if it happens to your horse, it seems pretty common, like Cushing's and dermatologic
Yes.
problems that are difficult to treat. But, there's other more simple things that we could look at using CBD for in the horse that, are everyday things. For instance, we know that CBD can be helpful with conditions like OCD, and so what's an OCD condition in a horse? Cribbing. So I'm not guaranteeing that it would stop it, but it certainly will help along with other measures you're taking to prevent them from getting into that habit. Loading up to a trailer. Some horses just don't do that very well, no matter how many times you've trained them. This can help settle them a bit. And when you go to competition, like trail rides or things like that, where there's a lot of horses, a lot of hustle and bustle, some horses' nervous systems just don't do that well in that kind of environment. So it doesn't really slow them down. It doesn't really adversely affect them. If you're not testing for performance drugs in whatever you're involved with, hopefully, maybe just a weekend fun ride or something, then it's okay to use it. Certainly you don't want to test positive, and I can't suggest that. Other times, when you're in terms of training with the horse, it maybe comes up a little sore. Maybe it's got a significant problem. It's been to the vets and you need to enforce stall rest. This could be very helpful just to keep them settled so they'll stay in that stall and not injure themselves because they're impatient, in that stall. So, those are some very, very simple things, to look at. Certainly, I think minor gait abnormalities, it can be very helpful for those. If it's just a little bit of a tendonitis or something that's not real serious or chronic, I think once we start seeing more pain, I think the early stages of Founder, I think it can be very, very helpful, even as a standalone. But as that gets worse, as we start seeing rotation of that bone, it becomes one more thing to use as part of that program. Although we have with that one stable that we did that dosing study in with the broken down horses in Indiana, I got a lovely letter from this one horse mother who just was there actually were tears on the letter. She was so happy that the horse was showing some relief from its founder. That must such a miserable disease. They're always on their feet. I can't imagine how awful that would be, So those are some basic things that you could look at with that. And certainly the idea of maybe the CBD would be helpful with metabolic syndrome or with some of the other metabolic problems we see. I think that's certainly, a possibility as well.
These are amazing. I could just cry because this is everything you mentioned. For all of us that own horses, these are so common and they're so difficult to treat from traditionally,
And I'm not
really
I'm not trying to say that these are perfect treatments, that they're going to take care of the problems of the animals. I think it's one more thing we can use. Some of these conditions are very difficult to treat. Some aren't, definitely worth a try to see if it treats well or not, with these. And that's just the CBD part. The mushroom part, I think, is also very important piece. And I think you can put the two together and they can actually work well together. For instance, we have mushrooms. There's a mushroom called lion's mane. And right now, lion's mane is the most popular mushroom in the United States because it helps with memory and it helps reduce stress and it helps us to settle and be less stressed and anxious, but it's not sedative. And they've even found it to be beneficial following neurologic injury. It seems to help stimulate some of the molecules that help with the repair of nervous tissue. And lion's mane originally was used for digestive issues. Historically, it was only recently that we started to use it for neurologic problems and for stress and memory. And they're even seeing some success with it in humans with Alzheimer's in terms of, maybe not curing them, but certainly helping with their memory, in a period of time. So lion's mane can be very good as a mushroom to use just for settling the horse. And combination of lion's mane with that caterpillar mushroom, the cordyceps. Cordyceps is a fascinating mushroom because it works through certain receptors in the body that are similar to the same receptors that stimulate our energy when we drink caffeine or eat chocolate or take a bronchodilator like theophylline. But it doesn't jitter you up because all mushrooms have a calming nature on this in the system. They just, that's how they work. Some more than others, like lion's mane more than others. And so so the cordyceps helps with energy. It's used for performance. It's been used by athletes to help improve their performance. It improves oxygenation of the blood. It helps to make a more efficient use of the ATP energy units that are being created. Plus, it has anti-inflammatory activity because of the beta glucans that are in it and some of the other molecules. So my thinking is I want to put together a lion's mane cordyceps blend in a powder form. Right now you could do it yourself by buying each of the individuals and putting them together, but I want to make one that's a blend, and then I can put actual dosing recommendations for horses. Let me share with you how I would dose these for horses, because it's not as much as you think it might be. If you've got, and let's just say it's a 1,000-pound horse, a 500-kilogram horse, just to make the math a little bit easier. But there's guidelines for dosing beta glucans, and beta glucans are these special carbohydrate or polysaccharide molecules that are found in the mushroom. In fact, for the mushroom, the beta glucans are part of the structural strength of the mushroom because they're part of the cell wall. So for the mushroom, they don't improve immune system. They just help to give it more strength. I don't know if you've ever seen, sometimes mushrooms can push their way up and push up a concrete paver. I mean, that's how sturdy the wall is of fungi. Fungi also contain other than beta glucans, something called chitin. Chitin is what makes up that hard shell of lobsters and crabs. So it's very tough. That also is a precursor to glucosamine, by the way. So it can have a benefit. It benefits the glucosamine can have a benefit in the digestive system. And so that's where the chitin in the mushrooms benefits most, is the digestive system and the microbiome. So but the beta glucans in the mushrooms signal the immune system of mammals, because animals have evolved over the millennia to learn how to fight off fungal pathogens. Diseases caused by fungi are some of the worst there are. They're the most difficult to treat. We know that animals and fungi both evolved from the same single-celled organism. And so mushrooms also contain, mushrooms and humans and all mammals share DNA. We're more similar to mushrooms than we are to plants. Isn't that cool?
My God.
So immune systems have learned to detect mushrooms, and when they detect a mushroom and they detect it from the shape of the cell wall, the beta glucan, it then stimulates the immune system to be active. And so maybe to fight off a fungal pathogen, but if there's not a fungal pathogen, maybe it'll fight off COVID, maybe it'll fight off cancer, maybe it'll work with parasites, so that's how the beta glucans work, and they work in all animals. We know beta glucans actually have an effect in animals as primitive as earthworms. So those aren't even mammals. So I created a dosing for the Real Mushrooms products using the beta glucan content. And one nice thing about that is that the Real Mushrooms products are all standardized to their beta glucan content. So that pouch that you buy this year will have the exact same beta glucan content as the pouch that you buy next year. So you can always have consistent dosing and be guaranteed, because we test every batch to ensure that it meets that minimum standard of beta glucans. So that's why using the beta glucan content that's on the bag and then multiplying that by the weight of the animal and a factor, a multiplication factor, is the way to get a dosage. So the lowest level of dosing for beta glucans that is probably for mammals, for dogs and cats, is probably the lowest level, but for horses, because they're so efficient with these things, I think is more of a moderate level, but it's a good starting point for a horse. It's 2.5 milligrams of beta glucans per kilogram of body weight of the horse per day. So let's say we've got a 500 kg horse, we've got 2.5 times 5. What's that come out to? 1,500, or my math is terrible.
My math, don't even, yeah, me too. Like,
Let me just,
yeah,
I think
I got my phone.
500 times 2.5. That's why we've got is 1,250 milligrams. Okay. So
Yep.
let's say we're going to take the lion's mane, like I mentioned. Lion's mane standardized to 25 milligrams of beta glucan per half teaspoon, or 1,000 milligrams. So that means that we divide the 1,250 by 250, and I get 5 half teaspoons, 2.5 teaspoons a day of that. So that's really not an awful lot, when you
Yeah.
consider, how much the horse weighs, so that's a nice dosage for that.
Wow.
So
Wow.
that's kind of how we do that, and we have a lot of instructional information on the Real Mushrooms website. People can go up there, and we have we have a tab that says Learn, and then we've got blogs and all kinds of information there. We've got contact forms. So Real Mushrooms also is set up for customer service as well. Although usually what they do when they get, like, let's say a horse, they get a horse question, they come to me anyway. So, through Real Mushrooms,
we're just coming to you. Yeah.
Either
We'll
way,
just come
either
to
way
you.
is fine. I'm pretty busy, so I just, and that's that's a good thing. But I just want to say I do my best to try to get back right away. I can't always, give immediate answers. I'm not the place to go if you have an emergency, But I do my best to be conscientious about that. Sometimes I miss one, so tweak me again, send me another email.
Yeah, I
that kind of
understand.
thing.
That's awesome. Well, it sounds like, I'm going to do my best to put this out there, and I will, between my YouTube channel and as a featured video for a while, and then I'll do Facebook, and I can send out an email, which we did already for the promotion of this, but I can follow up with it, because you should have like a consulting fee, like even whatever it is, whatever you're comfortable with, because wow, think of all the people that are going to want to contact you for help.
I mean, there's a point in which, I'm not going to be consulting like a regular veterinarian,
You're a different kind of doctor.
Yeah.
You're not,
sorry?
you're not that kind of doctor. You're a different kind of doctor.
Well, I was that kind of doctor. I just don't have that kind of time. It's very time consuming, and I'm involved in a lot of things. I'm working. I've got a book I'm trying to get out there. I'm doing a series of ebooks on different diseases. I work with Real Mushrooms. I've got a speaking schedule. I'm speaking almost every month of this year. I'm traveling to a different veterinary conference to speak. Although,
That's fantastic.
but what I'm saying is that the kind of consulting that I would do would be to suggest a product, and that's where the consulting fee comes in. If I can find a product that works for them, then they'll probably keep buying that over a period of time. So it works for them, and it works for me. We always, and we always try to give discounts and try to understand that the pet parent has a lot of expenses, and we want to try to keep, costs reasonable.
Yes.
We want long-term customers, for our website, and that's pretty much what we get. We tend to, they talk about the millennials and those kinds of people. I think we tend to get an older crowd, with our website, But check it out. There's a lot of good information there. I've got a blog as well. I also have a blog site called Nurse Your Pet. And an equine vet who's a good friend of mine, Joyce Harmon. I don't know if you've spoken with Joyce or not. She's up in Virginia. She was the dressage barn for me. Joyce is semi-retired now, but she still works educating as a holistic vet. And so she's also contributed to my blog site, Nurse Your Pet, with information about about holistic equine
Good
care.
to know.
I also have a canine rehab specialist also contributing to that blog site. I don't spend as much time on it as I used to, but it has a lot of good information people may want
Oh, good.
to look up as well.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. And again, I'll list all of this when I do the write-up
Okay.
for just the promotion. This is just amazing. I'm just blown away about the mushroom information. All of it.
It is, yeah. It's,
Oh
and
my
there really is a
gosh.
huge amount of interest by the public these days in mushrooms. Not just, they want mushrooms in their coffee. A lot of people are growing mushrooms at home so they can have mushrooms in coffee. That's the greatest way these days to take them. And some mushrooms are kind of bitter tasting. So when you put them in coffee, you don't get that bitterness to them. One mushroom called reishi, the only way I can take it as direct is in coffee. And what do you have there?
What have you got there, Lydia?
What have
I'm
you got
growing a
there?
mushroom. It's not on purpose, but I'm growing.
Oh,
a
you got a
mushroom
mushroom growing in there.
out of a
Very
It just kind of
plant
grew.
out of a nursery.
Oh, how interesting. Yeah, I wonder what it is.
First time my husband's ever brought me a perennial from the nursery that grew a mushroom in the house.
Fascinating. Wow. That's
It's
really
a
cool.
hellebore. It's a hellebore, but I don't think you're eating this one because it's got the ridges.
No,
underneath.
well, and you need to be, there is, in addition to people growing mushrooms in their own house, there's also a bunch of mushroom clubs now where people go out foraging and identifying
Yes.
mushrooms. And I just want to say,
Yes.
as popular as that is, you need to be really careful about picking wild mushrooms. You want to
Yes.
watch for mushrooms that might be growing out in the pasture and get rid of them because your horse might munch on them and they could be toxic. Likewise, your dog in the backyard after a rain. Some of those white mushrooms that grow are the most toxic mushrooms there are. So you need to go foraging with some people that are experts and can show you, how to
Yeah.
avoid the toxic mushrooms, but there is just so much interest in mushrooms. It's and there's a lot of interest about the mycelium in mushrooms, about how they can grow underneath forests and actually function almost like a world wide web, a network of communication for both nutrients and also chemical messengers between the trees and all the other little trees and plants that are in there. There's a special on Netflix. I don't know if you've seen it, called Fantastic Fungi. And it's really worthwhile watching, Caroline, if you have time to see it. It's got great animation, and it really talks much more about the impact that mushrooms and mushroom mycelium have on our global ecology and how important mushrooms and fungi are to the health of our planet, to our own health. What would we do without the kingdom of fungi? No cheese, no bread, no beer, no wine, no kombucha. It'd be a very dull world, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would. Yes, it would. All the things I love.
I know. Same
Well,
here.
it's almost
Well, at
morale
least the
season,
chocolate
so
wasn't
I'm
on that
getting
list.
excited.
Though. We don't need fungi for chocolate, though.
I'm getting excited
I
because
love
it's almost morale season here. So yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh, Dr. Silver, this is just amazing. This is so exciting. Thank you. I'm
Been a lot of
so
fun.
excited.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is fantastic. Is there anything else you want to add before we get ready? I can't believe it's almost been an hour.
I don't know. I mean, do we have questions or anything like that?
We had one
Yes, cool.
question from Becky, and she wanted to know what's a bleeder.
I'm sorry.
What's a bleeder?
Oh, what's
What
a
is a bleeder?
Bleeder. You talked about it in the beginning.
Oh,
What's a bleeder?
the nose bleeds for horses that race. When they get racing too fast, they develop this problem.
Yes.
Maybe it's a high blood pressure problem with the nasal passages, so you get the bleeders in racing horses. And so the treatments for that they usually give the horses Lasix, which will reduce blood pressure because it reduces the circulating volume. But that can also,
like for humans.
That can also affect performance. So looking for other means that won't test that would help to control that is, I think, an important thing for those that are in the racing industry.
It's scary. I mean, I can't even think, it can't be positive why they're getting such high blood pressure. That's really dangerous. I mean, what creates the high blood pressure? Do you know?
Well, I think the excitement of racing. I think horses are athletes,
The adrenaline?
and they get that competition. If you ever just seen them running out in the field, they're pretty competitive even there. So yeah, I think that's what happens is it's their excitement that raises their blood pressure. And just as we see with humans, some
Adrenaline.
have higher blood pressure than others. And certainly could be things
Yes.
like adrenaline, for instance, that are doing
I
that.
Yeah.
have a, I
Yeah.
have a quick question because I have
Yeah.
I work for a nursery she's an equine dentist. And
Okay.
can she use the relaxing part of fungi and CBD to work on teeth as opposed to using sedation with a vet?
Well, I think that would be a good question for us to answer, don't you? We should find out if that works or not, because that would be a great tool to use. I would suspect some horses you probably could, and other horses maybe not.
Mhm.
So it may depend on their particular level of stress, and
Discomfort. Yeah.
how calm they can get. But that certainly is something worth looking at, and I
And
would.
well, like what would be the dosage time? Like would she have enough time? The horse shows up, you dose the horse, and you have an hour to work on the teeth. And so there's that too. the
Right,
dynamic Piece.
right.
It's not immediate.
Yeah, I mean, I think, with the mushrooms, they're really not a drug. You're really not, you might get an immediate effect, but I don't know that I could guarantee it. I would be more likely to suggest using it for the week prior. You usually schedule
Mhm.
those farriers, those dentals anyway.
Or a
So
berry.
maybe put it on for the week prior. And then for the CBD, I would probably, try that for, maybe the 24 to 48 hours prior to make sure you've got, good levels up there. And it would be interesting to see how that works. And we would have to do it more than just on a single horse. We'd probably have to do 5 or 10 horses to get an average sense as far as whether it's going to help more horses than not,
Yeah.
as far as whether it's worthwhile to suggest it. But that certainly is one potential application. I made these chews, these soft chews for dogs using the lion's mane and this other mushroom reishi, but I also put tryptophan in it and theanine and valerian and catnip and passion flower and lemon balm, and it's very calming. And when we use that in combination with the CBD, it works quite well. I think it's the tryptophan that really does the job there.
Wow.
So that's also something to think about with horses. I haven't really worked with nutraceuticals in horses, but I wonder, how a horse would respond to tryptophan in combination with the mushrooms and the CBD. It's not an answer that I have. I look to see if there's some studies into the use of tryptophan in horses before I begin.
Wow.
But yeah, no, there's so much to do, so little time.
Oh, yeah, I understand. Oh my gosh. Thank you
Science
so
will
much.
outlive us though again. And if you leave it when you go, then pick it up where you left off, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
That's a good
That's the
point.
beauty of it.
true.
Yeah, leave your legacy. That's
Mhm.
beautiful. Thank you so much. What a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you both. It was really a lot of fun to
Great.
be with you both this
Would you
morning.
like to come
Well,
back?
you'll be
I'm sorry, what?
Would you like to come back sometime?
Yeah, sure. Invite me back. That'll be fun. And maybe we'll get, more attendees with specific questions that I can try
yes.
to answer for them. I'm not at my
Yep.
peak, with equine as I am with canine, but I think I can talk pretty good horse here and there.
Well, and it can be more dog oriented too. That's fine. I mean, it's all good.
Yeah.
It's everything horses and more. It's not just about horses. So yeah, now that I know
There's a
more
couple
about
more
you.
questions if you want
Yes,
them. There
another
are a couple
question?
more questions.
Excellent.
Do you use devil's claw and yucca for inflammation and pain management?
Devil's Claw and Yucca have been found to be helpful for those, and certainly when given at the appropriate dosages. should be helpful. But like any other thing, as I'm talking about with pain, oftentimes it takes more than just these two things to do it. I mean, you may have read an article somewhere or, whatever. And yes, they are both good, but they are limited in how well they can work until you start pairing them up with other herbs or other nutrients as well.
Awesome. And the
Thank
second
you.
one, another one, how long do you recommend administration of a particular mushroom, length of healing time versus used as food or slash feed?
I really think that mushrooms are superfoods, and I really think they're best given on a regular basis as part of as a lifestyle supplement. I call it a lifestyle supplement, meaning it really should be part of the daily regimen. And I think you can increase the dosage if you have special need. You could add a different mushroom if you have a different area that needs work on, but I really do suggest they be given on a daily basis. They have the best effect. You might get a good effect after 2 weeks. You'd probably get an even different effect after 2 months. So especially with things that might be working on behavior like lion's mane, I think the longer they're on board, the better they work. My lab is a rescue dog and he's got terrible PTSD, and which for a lab is tough because he's so needy. He always wants to be near me, but then he gets frightened to be too near me. So I've been using lion's mane on him. And at first I didn't think it had an effect, but it's been a couple of months now. And he does seem to be wagging his tail more and kind of more friendly. So that's kind of an example of where I think, especially for things like behavior, Is there another question, Lydia?
Is there any,
Um,
I don't think so. I have one. Is there any danger in masking so much pain that you hurt yourself beyond that? Like opioids do. Like when you're on an opioid or a muscle relaxer, it blocks the pain and you overdo it, and then you're in more trouble later. Is there that danger with the practice of fungi and CBD?
I think fungi reduce inflammation, but I don't, and there are studies that show they can help with pain, but I don't think they're very strong in that regards. I think they're just one more increment that you would want to use. CBD, on the other hand, is quite strong, but I think when you've got the kind of pain that you could injure yourself badly by overdoing it, I don't think CBD has that kind of strength like an opioid to mask it. And we do know that CBD works well with opioids. And there are some studies that show that CBD can lower the dosage of an opioid and still maintain the same level of pain management.
Thank you.
Oh, that's good to know. Yeah, very good to know. Wow, that's a great question, Lydia. That is an awesome question.
Mhm.
Well, thank you again. Thank you, everyone. Yep, I'm running out of time because I have to get going myself. So thank you so much. Thank you. I will be in touch with you, Dr. Silver.
Please do. Yeah, please reach out and
Yeah.
let's get things figured out for
Yeah. And do you have a discount? You said you had a discount code or a
I
discount?
do. I have to make it though. I have to put it together.
Okay. Yeah.
First.
So we
But
just,
it'll be
we just
25%. I'm sorry, what?
oh, wow. 25%. So how do we get hold of the discount? Just
Well, I'm going to, so are you going, if I give you that, you can then post it with this recording, right? Is that how that would
Yes.
work, or broadcast it to your attendees or whatever? I just have to make it first. I didn't think to do that first, so.
Oh, that's okay.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you though. Thank you for the offer. And yep. And then I guess, yeah, that's all good. This is wonderful. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you for having me
so
today.
much.
I hope my information is helpful.
What an honor. Yeah, this was amazing, mind blowing.
I get very
Okay.
excited when we get to talk about plants and that, not just
Yes.
horses.
Well, plants
Yes.
are so special, aren't they? I
They
share
are.
I share
In my
your.
career, so yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, good. Well, you both have a great day. We'll see you later.
Okay, you too. All right. Bye, everyone. God bless.
you.
Mwah. Bye,
Bye,
everybody.